Okay, key concept 3.2 is continuity and innovation of states, forms, and their interactions. So we're going to be talking about the different types of governments that were emerging during this time period and how existing governments were changing. So empires collapsed and were reconstituted, new forms of governance emerged, and some states were synthesized. Interregional contacts and conflicts between states and empires encouraged significant technological and cultural transfers. So let's talk about how empires were collapsing and reconstituting. The Roman Empire in Western Mediterranean fell in 476 CE, and with the fall of the Roman Empire at the beginning of the post-classical era, Western Europe collapsed into what we would consider an every man for himself situation. They had no unifying armies, laws, or educational systems. But one thing that remained intact was the Christian church. When the social and political vacuum was left by the fall of Rome, there was no government, there was no real societal system. The Christian church emerged to fulfill these duties. And most Westerners flocked to the church, seeking comfort in its faith. But more than that, the hierarchy in Rome also provided dearly needed social order and political stability for these people. The Pope served not only as a spiritual leader in Western Europe, but also through the organization of the Catholic Church. He was also the de facto political head of Europe. So this is the time period where you see the church getting heavily involved in politics. The Pope was also served by bishops with regional spiritual and political authority, and also by priests who served on the very local level. Change was occurring as the era continued because hierarchy expanded to include cardinals and archbishops who served as more layers of authority between the Pope and the bishops. Serving in education and missionary work were monks and nuns, men and women who lived in communities under the authority of a local priest. And membership in a community of nuns really gave women a chance to have a say-so in politics in a way that they didn't before. Hold on one second. I've lost my place. Sorry. Regarding missionary work, like Buddhism, Christianity became a missionary religion early on. The Western Church and the Pope sponsored missionary campaigns aimed at converting the Germanic people. And then the Eastern Orthodox Church, we'll talk about in a second, also spread Christianity to Eastern Europe and Russia. Secular leadership did exist in Western Europe, but it was local. And we're going to talk about how feudalism emerged in more detail at the end of this video, or at the end of this PowerPoint. But you do need to know that landowners and lords were running large farms or manors with poor landless people, serfs working the land. Privately hired soldiers were called knights, and they protected their lords' land from attacks by rival lords, bandits, and sometimes even Vikings. So around 700 CE, Charles Martel was a Christian leader of the Germanic Franks, and he defeated a Muslim army that had entered France from Spain in the Battle of Tours. In 800 CE, Martel's grandson Charlemagne united much of modern France, Germany, and northern Italy into what we called a new Roman Empire. This was also called the Carolingian Empire. And this was the first large secular government in Western Europe since the fall of Rome. But this really began, remember what I just talked about, this really began a power struggle for political authority between the Carolingians and the Catholic Church. At this point, the Pope and the Catholic Church had become accustomed to being in charge of not only things of faith, but also political decisions, and Charlemagne was threatening that. His empire fractured after his death, but this led to the formation of new types of government in Western Europe, in particular kingdoms in England and France. And struggles between the secular rulers of these and other Western nations and Christian church leaders continued for hundreds of years. The Byzantine Empire. Although the Western Roman Empire fell in 476, the Byzantine Empire, or the Eastern Roman Empire, flourished. They were doing very well for themselves. At its height, it was one of the most powerful empires in the world. It covered Eastern Europe and almost all of North Africa. It was the only survivor of the classical age, and the most famous emperor was Justinian. He ruled from 527 to 565, and he tried unsuccessfully to reconquer Western Rome, but his laws were his biggest success. His body of civil law was called Justinian's Code, and it was based on the Roman 12 tables of law. He controlled both political and religious power in his empire, and he replaced Latin with Greek as the official language of the empire. Its location on the Mediterranean Sea made it very successful in trade. It traded with areas like the Black Sea, the Red Sea, and the Indian Ocean. During most of its history, the Byzantine Empire was in conflict with nearby Muslim caliphates, and we're going to talk about what that means. But by the end of the period, was on the verge of collapse at the hands of the Muslim forces. Some other things about the Byzantines: most subjects did speak Greek, but it was not forced. In theory, there was social mobility, but in reality, that was rare. Constantinople was its present-day Istanbul in Turkey, and it was the political, commercial, and intellectual center. They had libraries containing Greek, Latin, Persian, and Hebrew text even. The Byzantine and the Roman churches have been growing apart ever since the fall of Rome, and the disagreement over the worship of icons or images of saints seemed to be the final straw. So the Pope and the Patriarch, who was the leader of the Byzantine Empire, excommunicated each other from their respective churches, and the church officially split into the Roman Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church. And this Eastern Orthodox form of Christianity later spread to the Slavic people and to Russia. And we're going to stop right there.